Welcome to Vibrant Ladies in the Waiting Room with Christy.
Are you a lady wanting to improve your communication skill? Are you an aspiring leader? Hello and welcome to Vibrant Ladies. My name is Christy. Today we are going to be talking about mastering your communication skill. We are going to be having a professional who is going to take us on this topic. But before that, let's go on a quick break.
Welcome to Vibrant Ladies in the Waiting Room with Christy.
Keep watching Vibrant Ladies in the Waiting Room.
Our vision is empowering and encouraging single and married women in their waiting period.
Keep watching Vibrant Ladies in the Waiting Room with Christy.
Hello, you're most welcome to another episode of Vibrant Ladies in the Waiting Room with Christy. Today's episode is an interesting one, and it is titled How Ladies Can Master the Art of Public Speaking and Become More Confident Speaker. And I deliberately brought an expert to do justice to that topic, and is here today in person of Dr. Greg, popularly known as English Doctor. Dr. Greg, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're most welcome.
Well, I am utterly enthralled to be here with you today.
Thanks so graciously. Today's topic, like already introduced it, is all about public speaking and being a confident communicator. Can you tell us the three important elements of public speaking?
Right, that in my view is a stimulating question. The first element of public speaking is the message. It's got to be as clear as crystal, because if it's not clear to you, the speaker, it is not going to be clear to members of the audience. And one thing that can make a message resonate with our audience members is to distill the message into not more than 10 words. And this has been the tradition in the Toastmasters World Championship of Public Speaking. Of particular reference is Jim Key in 2003. His message was, "It's never too late to follow your dreams." We've equally seen the Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking in 2012, Ryan Albury. What was his message? Trust is a must. As a consequence, the point is, if the message is clear to us as the speakers, it is going to be clear to the audience members. My point is, the message has to be clear first on the page before we take it to the stage. My next element is there has to be what's called audience interaction. Mary Smith, a social media expert who was born in 1966, said something intriguing about engaging with the audience. What did she say? She did say, to the best of my recollection, that content is king, engagement is queen, and the lady rules the house.
Wow.
It's a quote that treasures engagement over content. And there are three inexpensive ways to engage with the audience members when you speak in public. Number one is the use of silence. Speakers need to be comfortable in silence. That's number one. The second point is that as a speaker, to engage with members of your audience, you need to ask them thought-provoking, intelligent questions. Asking questions will instigate the brain to begin to search for the answers. And when the brain is searching for answers, they are engaged. The next point when it comes to engaging the audience is storytelling. We love stories. Stories can make our message stick. When it comes to telling stories, I have a recommendation. There are 4 types of stories you can tell, or your stories can revolve around what we call the 4 F's. What are the 4 F's? Tell stories about your frustrations, about your fears, about your flaws, about your failures. If you can tell stories around the 4 F's, that is going to engage members of the audience because they can see their own lives through those 4 F's. The final piece of the puzzle when it comes to the elements of public speaking, in my view, is have an impactful, well thought out closing. The closing of a speech is not when you ramble. William Shakespeare, before he passed away in 1616, did say that all is well that ends well. But the closing has to be properly planned. It's called the recency effect. That's the first thing that your audience members who would remember the moment you stopped speaking. That's why we say last words linger longer. Last words linger longer. It's not a time to ramble. It has to be well planned. Then you can deliver it with impact. To summarize, the 3 elements of public speaking to the best of my sagacity. Number 1 is the message has to be clear. Number 2, there has to be that audience interaction. And number 3, the closing has to be impactful.
Oh wow. I believe diction has got a major role to play in terms of speaking confidently and effectively in public. So can you tell us how diction can add color to our public speaking?
When I joined Toastmasters in 2017, I perused its competent communication manual, and its 4th project said something entrancing about your question. It says that good grammar and proper diction are major factors in our ability to influence our audience. That's because audiences perceive good grammar and proper diction as the unequivocal indicators of a credible and well-educated speaker. To demystify that, I'd like to say that diction can add color to one's speech in an avalanche of ways. When you communicate with proper diction, it signals to the audience that this person is confident, is trustworthy, is knowledgeable. This person appears to be elegant. As a consequence, we must always strive to refine our diction skills as public speakers.
How can that be done?
How can that be done? Is, in my view, a rejuvenating question. For 10 years, I taught myself how to pronounce words properly because
Wow.
the environment I lived in then was bereft, was bankrupt of English teachers who masterfully understood the mechanics of pronunciation or diction. So what did I do to gain some mastery of pronunciation or diction before I went to the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria training school in 2009? Well, I was often listening to the owners of the language, speakers, presenters, news anchors of the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. And I would always listen, oh, why did they pronounce it as stomach, not stomach? Why presentation, not presentation? I would always go to my dictionary in those years to check and check and check and check and
So
check.
dictionary was your friend.
And gradually, I mastered the speech sounds of English, which, historically speaking, are prevalent of what is known as the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, which came into existence in 1888. It is a brainchild of the International Phonetic Association, which was formed in 1886. The thing is, we have to understand the sounds of English. We have to be extensively exposed to international content. News media channels, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. Watch movies.
Wow.
And these tips can help to refine our diction skills.
Answered gorgeously, Doctor. That's very interesting. Talking about effective public speaking, I also know that grammar has got a role to play. How can that help to have an effective and compelling delivery during your public speaking?
You are right to assert that grammar has a role to play when it comes to public speaking. In point of fact, grammar and public speaking are inextricably intertwined. So the question is, how can we develop our grammar? Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
The first tip I'd like to share is we need to be humble enough to learn from our mistakes. I have made a slew of mistakes in my life when it comes to grammatical expressions. Because when I began the journey, I was oblivious to the technicalities of grammatical range and accuracy. I was only focused on pronunciation. As such, I made a slew of mistakes. And each time I received correction, I learned from that. I recall one time I went to the University of Lagos to interview Professor Esohwode, a distinguished professor of international law and jurisprudence. And I was doing my introduction in his office. And I said, what can the federal government do to nip the situation on the bud? And he was evidently exasperated. And he said, Craig, nip it on the bud? That's not correct. You ought to say, nip it in the bud. And I learned something new. Accordingly, my first point is we need to be humble enough to learn from our mistakes. My second point would be review the basics. Brush up on the basics. For instance, learn about the conjunctions, the prepositions, nouns, pronouns, what we call the parts of speech. If you have that understanding, then that is an imperishable foundation to build competence in grammatical range and accuracy. The other point I'd like to mention is that I realized that when we go to the dictionary to look up a word, we're always in a hurry.
Yeah.
We're in a hurry. We just look up the word, its meaning, and we hurtle out of sight. My encouragement is, when you look up a word in a competent monolingual dictionary, be inquisitive, be investigative. Look up the sentence structures. I looked up the Collins, I looked up the Cambridge, I looked up the Oxford.
Wow.
Then I realized that we don't say something is synonymous to something else, because the dictionary won't give you that. You say something is synonymous with something else. Something is instrumental in something else, not instrumental to something else. So when you observe that trajectory in the dictionaries of English, then you will not say this is synonymous to this. So my point is that we need to
Pay attention to detail.
pay attention. Pay attention. The dictionary is a teacher, and it's teaching you something whenever you look up a word inside of it. Because people should pay more attention to the sentence structures in dictionaries. The other point is that we need to acquaint ourselves with common grammatical mistakes. Common, pervasive, ubiquitous grammatical errors that people make every day. I have a plethora of them in the book you are holding right now. So something like this can help speakers to avoid errors, mistakes, whenever we speak to the audience members. The other point I'd like to mention is that we need to learn to write. We need to have a grammar notebook. We need to learn to write. There is this phrase in Latin. It says, "Verbum volant scripta manent."
What does it mean?
Thank you very kindly for that. It means that spoken words will fly away, but written words will remain.
Wow.
So this quote is saying that writing is indispensable to learning. So when we write grammar points down, we can always review them. It's called the generation effect. Learning productively through writing. Most people don't write. We just listen, just look. Not enough. We need to learn to write the grammar points down. Is there any other point I'd like to mention within the context of this interview? I would suggest that those points I've mentioned are enough to propel anybody who's interested to become more competent when it comes to using grammatical structures in public speaking.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Thank you so much.
Information.
Let's talk about you now. Let's talk about your success story as a doctor. Not just a doctor, but English doctor. What actually motivated you to do what you're doing now? And even as an author, you wrote this book, Elevating Your Expression, and I've read it. It's a good one. I learned so much when I read the book. So, what really motivated you to do that? How did you get into this?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your riveting review of the book. I failed mathematics 3 times.
Wow.
Before before I were able to secure admission to study at the university. And in those years when I was trying to resit mathematics, I was becoming increasingly comfortable around the dictionaries of English. And if you have to ask my mom would say that I failed mathematics 3 times because I was studying dictionaries and not solving mathematical questions or equations.
Interesting.
So I struggled with speaking properly. And when I wanted to learn it, my environment was bankrupt of competent teachers who could administer the knowledge of pronunciation. I taught myself for 10 years.
Really?
10 years before I went to the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria Training School in 2009, where I graduated as the best student.
Doctor,
in
teaching
English
yourself, you were teaching yourself using your dictionary, is that?
Of course, and listening to BBC presenters, news anchors, and announcers. And I did this every day for huge amounts of hours.
Wow.
For 10 years. And I thought, this is something that I would like to share with other people who may be, or who are perhaps struggling with speaking properly. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now.
As a coach.
As a coach, to help.
Hello, viewers out there. If you are interested in elevating your diction, your public speaking skills, your grammar, we have an expert here who is ready to do justice to that. And for that, you can contact us. You can call the number scrolling. And if you like to get this book, Elevate Your Expression, it's a good one. I've read it. And this will really help you. you can also contact us. Thank you very kindly. I like the fact that you did that for 10 years and you didn't give up. That is determination.
well, I was often comfortable in the company of dictionaries of English, and sometimes I wouldn't even eat anything.
Wow.
And I looked excruciatingly slim. And when I went to the university to study sociology, I was still in the company of the dictionaries of English. My life has often revolved around the dictionaries of English since I was a teenager.
Wow, I like that. And I'm sure the tips you've given to us will really help, because you find a lot of people embarrassed when they are called up in public to speak. They can't face the public to speak, even though they are good speakers.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that means that if you can focus on these areas, that is going to upscale or skyrocket your confidence, my confidence, when speaking in public.
Thank you. And before we draw the curtain today, can you tell us about the waiting room? You know, this program, this program is called the waiting room. Different people are waiting for one thing or the other. And I'm sure what I am waiting for, or what you are waiting for, or perhaps has waited for, is quite different from what I am waiting for.
That's right.
So can you tell us about the waiting room? And if you have been to the waiting room, what is your experience about the waiting room?
Oh, wow. It's scintillating. The waiting room, in my view, is the incubator of life, where we learn the virtues of patience and perseverance. I have been in the waiting room myself. We got married in 2015, and for 8 years,
Wow.
for 8 years, we had no child. We're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. At some point, we met a fertility doctor who told us that without an IVF, without the intervention of an IVF, we will not be able to conceive. To cut a long story short, today we have a daughter who was born on the 29th of September, and she was conceived naturally.
Wow,
without the
amazing,
support
amazing. God is good.
of an
Congratulations.
IVF. Yeah, and I'm glad that you asked this question, and I feel that, and I hope that this story will encourage somebody
Oh, yeah?
who's in the audience and waiting for God to manifest His glory in a particular area of their life.
Wow, I like that. Thank you so very kindly, Dr. Fred, for having an amazing time with us and coming on this program. Indeed, we've been having an educative and enlightening time with you. I have really learned so much. And thank you very much for honoring us with your presence in spite of your busy schedule.
My pleasure.
Hello, viewers out there. I have no doubts that you have learned 1, 2, 3 things about today's program on public speaking. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed today's program. Bye for now.